This week is Thanksgiving, a holiday of gratitude and abundance. We gather around tables with our family, friends, and neighbors, whether at our home or another's home, at a restaurant, or in a church fellowship hall. Sometimes there are people at the table whom we find it difficult to be around. And so, in order to preserve the peace, we avoid certain topics at all costs. My Thanksgiving will be a gathering of about 15, an extended and blended family including spouses and exes, children and stepchildren, teenagers and toddlers, a retired police officer, and more than one pastor. We are people of different religious perspectives, political persuasions, and views on issues such as guns and the upcoming presidential election. Our family is not without its share of drama, but what family doesn't have at least a little? Navigating challenging relationships at the holidays is apparently quite common if a quick Google search of headlines is any indication. Recent headlines include how to survive Thanksgiving surrounded by your relatives, saving grace at the Thanksgiving table, breaking bread at a broken Thanksgiving table, and embrace imperfect, drama-free Thanksgiving. Clearly, many of us experience anxiety about gathering around the Thanksgiving table and feel the need to prepare ourselves for survival. Another headline that stood out to me was "Political Polarization Shortened Thanksgiving Dinners," about a study conducted in 2016, just after the last presidential election, using location tracking on 10 million cell phones, as well as data on political demographics. This study found that the election and political polarization caused people to leave Thanksgiving dinner earlier if it brought together people with different political leanings, 20 to 40 minutes earlier on average. Maybe we all need to bring the hymn that we just sang to our Thanksgiving dinners. Break not the circle of enabling love, where people grow forgiven and forgiving. Break not the circle, make it wider still, till it embraces all the living. This hymn is one that calls us to a vast and expansive love, and it calls us to be agents of grace. Today is the final Sunday in this sermon series that we've been doing on enough. Our question today is, do we have enough love and grace for others, including those across the Thanksgiving table from us? In all except the most outright harmful or hostile situations, I believe that we do have enough love and grace, and in a way we must. Anytime there is a big change in our lives or the life of our family, a death or a loss, a change in health, a breakdown of a marriage, or a new life and new family members, it impacts our holiday gatherings. A few years ago, a friend of mine, Elizabeth, almost lost her dad to idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. Basically, his lungs had turned to scar tissue and they didn't know why. She watched him slip away, getting weaker and weaker. One day in August, while in the car together, he told Elizabeth what hymns he wanted at his funeral. In November, she had a quilter make a stole out of her dad's old ties because she thought that he might die before her ordination to the ministry in January. But then, right around this time of year, someone died, and Elizabeth's family and several others on organ waiting lists got a call. There was a good match for her dad, and so several days later, he received a life-saving lung transplant. Elizabeth reflects back on this time with gratitude for modern medicine, and she reflects on the strangeness of the experience, knowing that someone had died to bring her and her dad and her family this hope. She wondered how the donor's family had mourned. The transplant saved her dad's life, but the gift of new life wasn't all warm and fuzzy. It came with disruption and responsibility and new health challenges. He and his family were forever changed. But something also changed in Elizabeth and how she understands human connection. One day, a year and a half after the transplant, she was out running and she spotted someone wearing Donate Life gear. She stopped them and said, "Hey, this is weird, but I saw your hat and I just wanted to see what your connection is. My dad is a transplant recipient." It was a middle-aged man and his mom, and they told Elizabeth that his brother had died young of something rare, and they chose organ donation. They kept getting notifications. His eyes were in Tennessee. His lungs were over here. He had been a small person, so his heart went to a child. They think sometimes about how those pieces of him are still living all around the country. Elizabeth told them that she would probably never get to meet or know her dad's donor family, and she asked if she could thank them. And she did. This connection between strangers is evidence of the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. Sometimes that interdependence is very physical. The book of 1 Corinthians in the Bible uses the image of a body to describe the beloved community. And this is part of what interdependence means now to Elizabeth. Organs and tissue connecting strangers across time and space. Just this fall, one of our church members' lives was saved by a family member donating her kidney to him. Every time you donate blood here at church or elsewhere, you participate in this interdependence too. We need one another to survive, says Elizabeth, not just abstractly, but in our flesh, in our blood, in the choices we make to give life even amidst death. I wonder, she says, what would change if I lived with this knowledge in the forefront of my mind? If my cousin's heart kept your child alive? If my O negative blood saved the life of the religiously conservative man in your neighborhood? If your uncle's lungs breathed air into my dad's body the day he met his granddaughter? How would I act if I really knew that we are not isolated individuals, but part of each other's being? What grace, messy, vulnerable, and disturbing, might come to dwell among us. Elizabeth's life and perspective on human connection is forever changed by this experience because she knows in a visceral way that we are all connected and that we need each other to survive. She asks, how would we act if we really knew this? And I ask, how would we be with each other around the holiday table if we really knew this? What grace might come to dwell among us? Grace is acceptance, compassion, love, and understanding that creates a space in which we can learn and grow and make mistakes while still being held in love. What makes grace especially powerful, though, is that it is unearned. It is given with love despite differences and imperfections. What saves us and saves our Thanksgiving dinners is gratitude transformed into grace. In many religious traditions, the practice of saying grace or giving thanks before a meal reflects the belief that the food and the people present are blessings. They are gifts that we did not earn and that we did not bring to the table alone. They are evidence of grace, for some the grace of God, and so we give thanks. When we're grateful, we are more able to be graceful. Practicing gratitude turns what we have into enough. Year after year, for over a decade, I've returned at the holidays to a table grace written by Unitarian Universalist minister Elizabeth Green. She writes this: Spirit who is all things to us, presence in which we live and move and breathe and have our being. What a gift to be here together, sharing our food, our spirit, ourselves. We ask no blessing upon this food, nor upon ourselves, because the blessing is already here, if we but pay attention. What we do ask for is the courage and wisdom to be mindful of thy great blessings. We ask, O Holy One, that we remember to cherish this food, savoring the tastes, the smells, the feel, the miracle of nourishment to our bodies, gifts of our lovely earth. We ask, too, that we remember to cherish each other, to taste and savor our relationships, to understand that what we know of the sacred, we know through these bodies and through these connections of friendship and love. Grant us the wisdom to pay attention. Grant us the generosity and the strength to open our hearts. So be it, blessed be. Amen. These words are a reminder that I can always use. I love Green's words because she doesn't ask for grace to shower down upon us. Her words acknowledge that the blessings and the grace are already present and calls us to open our hearts to these gifts and to one another. Think about the people who will be around your Thanksgiving table this week. Picture them in your mind's eye and consider the spirit with which you want to encounter them. Maybe you are excited and have a deep love for the people you'll dine with. Even so, there's the possibility that the stress of preparing and serving a meal might lead you to be less than graceful with each other. Or maybe you are dreading some person or persons with whom you will gather and summoning the strength that you need for that time. Picture these people. How are you connected to them? In blood and flesh, in spirit, in common humanity, in love? And what do you share in common with them? If we approached the table and our relationships with people around it like the poet Joy Harjo in her poem that Christine read, Perhaps the World Ends Here, it could transform our holiday experience. The table, as she says, is where we eat in order to live. It's where young and old come together and where we learn what it means to be human. It's where stories are told and made. It's where we laugh at our poor falling down selves and put ourselves back together again. It's where fights occur and are resolved. It's where people let down their guard and are vulnerable because they are hungry for what's in front of them. The food is a vehicle for truth-telling and helps season and sweeten the less than joyful moments. The table is a place for beginnings and endings. When we approach the table as Harjo does, we can more easily accept family and friends as they are. Now, by this, I don't mean approval or acceptance of bad behavior or hostility, but rather acceptance of the person as a person, knowing that the kitchen table holds the best and the worst of people. We can more easily embrace our commonalities without embracing what causes pain and division. This is what makes my family Thanksgiving work. We have divergent viewpoints on politics and religion, but we share common values about how we treat each other. This is the basis for the love and for the grace shared in that space. There's a song that I recall fondly from my teenage years by the singer-songwriter Dar Williams, an upstate New Yorker like me. It's called The Christians and the Pagans. The song is about a Christmas family gathering, but it really applies to any holiday. The first couple verses are this. Amber called her uncle and said, "We're up here for the holiday. Jane and I were having solstice. Now we need a place to stay." And her Christ-loving uncle watched his wife hang Mary on a tree. He watched his son hang candy canes, all made with red dye number 3. He told his niece, "It's Christmas Eve. I know our life is not your style." She said, "Christmas is like solstice, and we miss you, and it's been a while." So the Christians and the pagans sat together at the table, finding faith and common ground the best that they were able. And just before the meal was served, hands were held and prayers were said, sending hope for peace on earth to all their gods and goddesses. The food was great, the tree plugged in, the meal had gone without a hitch, till Timmy turned to Amber and said, "Is it true that you're a witch?" His mom jumped up and said, "The pies are burning," and she hit the kitchen. And it was Jane who spoke. She said, "It's true, your cousin's not a Christian, but we love trees, We love the snow, the friends we have, the world we share. And you find magic from your God, and we find magic everywhere. So whether your holiday table includes Christians and pagans or Republicans and Democrats, this song's wisdom applies. They sat together at the table, finding faith and common ground the best that they were able, lifting up prayers for peace on earth to all their gods and goddesses. May it be so for all of us. We practice this all the time here at church, a space that holds the best and the worst of people, our joys and sorrows, our victories and our imperfections, our vulnerability and our strength. A place where we have different understandings of God, but joined together in common commitment to building a community and a world of love and justice. The Thanksgiving table is another space in which we can practice and embody grace and love. But as we know, this is often hardest to embody with those closest to us, our families. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm that all people are worthy of love, including you, including that person across the table from you. And our Universalist theology reminds us that we are also held in love, a love so big that it connects and transforms us and our relationships with each other. So let us embody this theology and practice our Unitarian Universalist faith this week and all weeks, but especially this week at the Thanksgiving table. And let gratitude for what we have inspire grace and love for ourselves and for one another. It's already there if we open our hearts to it. Amen.